Hello everyone. So far we have studied that what are built-in function, what are data types, what are variables. In this video I will take few examples and see how we use these basic functions. So let's suppose I take one variable and I'm say a is equals to 5. So this is a value, this is a variable name, and here I am using one operator, and the name of this operator is assignment operator. Operator is like a symbol that does a specific job. So this is a symbol and it has a meaning. What it does is it takes a right hand side value and assign it to the left hand side. So it assigns value of 5 to the a. This is what we call assignment operator. Like this there are many operators. We will talk about them in future videos. Okay. Print is one of the important function, built-in function. It's already there in the Python. We just use it whenever we want to display anything. For example, if I want to print this a, I can enter a value of a here and it will print. Okay. And we use these circular parentheses with functions. And let's suppose this is a function you want to read about it. Just click your mouse cursor inside this and press Shift Tab. So Jupyter Notebook has a feature, it displays you some basic description about this function. This is a little technical definition, like you can print your values like a stream of characters, or you can print it to a system standard output. So your operating system device controls like what is your standard input. It can be your monitor or something else. Okay, but in simple words, if you want to display something, you can use print. So if I want to display a, I will print it like this. Okay, so that is one thing. In Jupyter Notebook, if I just leave it like this, last line automatically gets printed or displayed. So if I leave it like this, it will still print the same thing, but it only works for last line. Let's suppose I have two variables. If I say b is 7 and I try to print a and b, it will not work. It will only work for the last line. So if I run this, it's only printing the last line, not the second last line. So if you want to print both, then you should use print. So personally I prefer to use print every time, so that I know they are both are. So if I want to print both, now it will work. If you just write without printing, only last line gets printed. So it's a good practice to use print. So print is a very important built-in function. Like this there are functions like input. This is very commonly used. If you want user to enter some values, we use input. Okay. And then another function is round. For example, if you have some decimal values, you want to convert it to round it off to something, you can use round. There is a type. If you want to check what is the type of any object, I can use type. For example, ID. This is if you want to know the ID of any object. For example, I want to know what type of object is A. So what I can do is I can simply say type A. If I want to know what is the ID of this object, I will just say ID. If I run this, it says int. If you remember, data type int is a class, and we can say A is its object because A is storing integer value, so it is the int type of object. In Python, almost everything is, we can call it an object. So there are different type of object. This is a integer type of object. If I take, let's say, if I take C and I give it a value and I call it, now this is a string value. So C variable is storing a string value. Okay. So if I run this and I check the type of C, it will be a string str. So whenever you want to check the type, most of the time by looking at it we can say, okay, for example, if I let me make it 7.7, So this becomes a decimal. If I run this again, okay, let's check the type of B. Now B is a float, it's a decimal value, so it's a float. C is a string. Okay, like this, if you want to check the type of any object, we use type. Okay, if you want to check the ID of any object, it will be a long number, so this is a object ID. That means Python is sometime in the background creating one ID for this object. Like this, each object will have some ID internally. We will not use it for programming, but if you want to know, let's suppose sometime we want to compare whether two objects are same or not, that time ID is needed. If the ID is same, that means objects are same. If ID is not the same, objects are not the same. Okay, so that's why ID can be useful. Okay, so like this we can use ID function, built-in function for our programming needs. Okay, then we have our input. Here I am manually assigning value. Okay, so I am manually saying a is equals to 5, but let's suppose I want user to enter a value, then I have to use input. For example, I can take, let's say, variable AA, and I can use input function, and I can display one message, please enter a number, and then whatever user will enter, I will store it into AA variable, and it will get printed. So if I take this and if I am running it, I am entering a value, let's say 80. Now this 80 gets stored in AA, and then I will print it. So if I press enter, it gets printed. So now I am not manually assigning value. I am using input function to read input from the user. Okay, so this function is highly used to take whenever you want your program to read some input, or you want your user to enter some input. We use this function. Okay, so similarly for round function, let's suppose you have one variable bb and its value is, let's say, or I can take, let's say, let's suppose there is a d variable, its value is 10, and there is a e, its value is 3, and I am saying f is d divided by e, and I am printing f. I am dividing 10 by 3, or I can directly, I don't need to make it a little complicated, I can directly say 10 divided by 3. So if I run this, I am getting so many decimals. If you want your decimal to fix at one particular value, let's suppose you want only 2 decimals, 3 decimals, then we can use round function. Okay, now you can round here before printing, or you can round while printing. So if I take this value, let's suppose if I use round function, so round function takes 2 input to run the function. Each function might take some inputs to do their job. For example, here I am using type function. I need to enter some input so that this function can work. So like this, some function can take 1 input, some can take 2 input. If I try to run this type function without any input, I will get one error. Okay, it says type takes 1 or more arguments. That means this function was expecting some input, then only it will work. And if I don't provide, I will get an error. These type of errors, what we call syntax errors. That means I am not following the rule of the Python language. Python language has its own grammar, what you can do, what you can't do, so I am not following that rule. So that's why this program will not run. So like this, when I use a round function, it expects 2 things. Okay, if you want to read about it, round function, press shift tab, and what it says, it takes two things: what number do you want to round off and how many decimals do you want. Okay, so here I am saying I want to round off this number and I want 3 decimals. Okay, so that's why this round function takes two inputs: one, the number that you want to round off, and how many decimals do you want. So if I run this, now I'm getting 3 decimals. Like this, you can change it to 4, you will get 4 decimals. Similarly 2. So that means I am dividing 10 by 3, whatever the values, I am rounding it off to 4 decimals and it gets stored into F, and I am printing F. Okay. So these are some of the basic function which I want to introduce now, because in the future examples I will be using these basic functions. So print, input, round, type, ID, they are very commonly used. There are many other functions, but like for example print and output, they are quite frequently used. Okay, so you have to remember what are built-in functions. They are already there in the Python, how to use them. Each function can expect some input. Okay, if you want to read about it, just write the function and try to read about it before using. Okay, so that's all for this video. Thank you for watching.